Hello, I'm Annie O'Brien. I'm the current editor of Airmail magazine, and this year the magazine turns 80. And to celebrate, we have a very special guest with us who has a unique connection to it. Anthony Inglis is a Grammy Award-nominated classical music conductor. He's equally at home in the worlds of opera, ballet and musical theatre. But, among the other things in his very busy life, he's an ambassador for the RAF Association and he volunteers on our outreach and Connections for Life welfare projects. Welcome back to the RAF Association, Anthony. It's lovely to see you back here again.
It's lovely to be back.
Thank you for really sort of coming through the strikes and doing the planes, trains and automobiles to get here.
Yes, but it actually went very smoothly. I was surprised.
Could you, now, you have an alter ego. You are best known as Anthony Inglis.
Yes.
Could you tell me about your other name, other life, and what that connection is with the RAF Association?
Okay.
Airmail magazine.
Right. So I am actually Anthony Inglis Howard Williams. So my surname is Howard Williams. And when I first started out as a conductor, I was conducting the Royal Ballet in Swan Lake, Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake Ballet. And there was another conductor there called Howard, no hyphen, Williams. So his given name was Howard, his surname was Williams. So the cry would go up before performance, who's conducting tonight? And it's Howard Williams. Which one? Anthony Howard Williams or Howard Williams? So that's why I haven't changed it. I just stopped at Anthony Inglis as a professional name.
And so who is the Howard Williams that we're so interested in?
My grandfather. But in fact, I do go around the country now talking about the 9 pilots in the RAF. So it's both sides of my family, my mother's and my father's. My father's side is Howard Williams. And the person we're interested today is Ernest Howard Williams, E.L. Howard Williams, Air Commodore in the end. And he was the one who became executive chairman of RAF about a year before, just as the war was ending, for about 3 years, I think.
And I think he was the first editor of Airmail.
Not only the first editor, he created it. He actually founded it. It's his idea.
So when you were younger, did he talk to you about this?
No, sadly not. He died quite young. He spent a lot of his time after the RAF in Africa, in what was then called Kenya and now called Kenya. And he was in politics out there. He was in the opposition to Jomo Kenyatta. So we didn't see a lot of him. He came back to the country shortly before he died. He did come and stay with us. I do remember him. Big, rotund man. But he died he was in his 60s, I think, just when he died.
So you'd have been very little and possibly not interested.
Sadly, that is the case. When you're, not even in your teens, in my early, noughties or whatever, between 0 and 10, yes, we didn't talk to him much.
So when did your interest in him develop? You say you've got 9. I mean, there is this list of esteemed Mosquito pilots and, relatives of yours who were involved in the RAF. So, but when did you start being involved in them and in him, in E.L. Howard Williams, as he was known?
What pricked I suppose coming to RAFA. So not that long ago, really. Writing my autobiography may have been the catalyst. So I thought I would. My autobiography was written because I suddenly realised that most of my life will have been lived before my children were born, at least a large part of it. And I thought, depending on how long I'm going on for, of course, and I thought they should know something from where they came. And so I started looking into it, and I knew it was interesting, I didn't know it was extraordinary. So we have, and just to make it quite short because it goes on for hours, so there's a Battle of Britain pilot, there's number 2 to Dowding at the outbreak of the war, there's the man who was responsible for America joining the war in Europe, as opposed to just the Far East after Pearl Harbor. There was the man responsible for coming up with the idea of sending the little ships to Dunkirk. The list goes on and is still continuing because, of course, our son is currently a Chinook pilot in 18th Squadron at RAF Odium.
Which is fantastic.
Yes.
So, have you seen any early copies of Airmail?
Now, we've talked a little bit about this because my brother is supposed to have the first year's supply of Airmail, and he can't find them. They're in a bundle somewhere. He's been looking for a few months now, and he can't find them. So an early one, you showed me the first one.
Did.
I think.
And I have it here. So this is thanks to the Imperial War Museum, which have scanned them digitally. So we have an archive of the last 80 years of Airmail here.
Right.
Not complete. We have a chunk in the 1960s that has gone missing somewhere in time, and we struggle anything between sort of 44 and 47. But we have some. We have some, and I have some here, and they have E.L. Howard Williams written on alternate ones, slightly bizarrely, which is a little bit odd. So, this is the first one. Now, the interesting thing is that it has no masthead.
Was that
That is the cover.
the cover?
So, no, it's probably likely that your brother is looking for something that says Airmail on it. And the first 2 do not have Airmail written on them because there was a spat going on with publishers at the time who wouldn't release something to do with the copyright of some document to do with the RAF Association, etc. It's actually on the final page of the first issue, so you could look that up. But this was the first issue, and in the back, here is his name. Chairman of the Executive Committee, Air Commodore E.L. Howard Williams, MC.
Yeah.
And there he is,
Yes.
at the beginning.
Yes.
There is an introduction, but it's not signed. I suspect he wrote that.
I suspect you're right.
And it's fabulous, the passion that he puts into it. Bearing in mind that this was written while the war was still going on. So this first issue was May 1944.
Now, the copies that my brother has is one of these.
Okay.
It's from somewhere. It's from here, all of them from the first year.
Wow.
But they weren't in very good condition.
Well, we get what we're given.
Yes.
People have collected them. People have sent them in to us, members who are, or children of members who are clearing out and going, we thought you might want these for your archive, and they send them in.
Oh.
And we're very, very grateful. But I mean, he talks here about to win, we shall have to work and fight as never before. Let us make no mistake about that. Further, our fighting men and their leaders have a claim to our complete confidence. If everyone on both sides of the Atlantic made a supreme effort, the war might well end this summer.
And that's 44.
44, May 44.
Yes.
So it's just, when we do find them, they're lovely.
He, of course, was a contrary person. He argued a lot with senior officers, including Dowding. Trenchard was his friend, but there was Trenchard had advised him at the end of the First World War to go and study engineering on behalf of the Royal Air Force. And he did that. He went to Oxford, Cambridge, London University. He went to 3 universities, studied engineering, and then was never promoted. Now, whether he was not promoted beyond Air Commodore because of his engineering ability, as opposed to the fact that he was quite an argumentative man, which he claims because he watched the Somme and Passchendaele from the air. So he was watching those thousands and thousands of men die for what he couldn't see any reason. And he always had a low opinion of senior commanders, certainly in the army, because they didn't take into account the cost of the lives versus what was gained.
It shines through in what he writes in these first ones. I mean, this is June 44, which is again from the Imperial War Museum. And, you know, the lesson is there. In these trivious times, now that's an unusual word now, might have been used then, I like it. The lesson is there. In these trivious times, give our people something to work for. Therein lies the great stability which every responsible person seeks for the future. Let the planning be vast and the reward great. There is the air route to security and prosperity. And he's constantly fighting. There's another piece later on where he's talking about people after they've been demobbed and struggling because they're not in a union. And he's saying the amazing skills that they bring were quite... And he's fighting, battling all the time on behalf of the personnel of the Air Force. And of course, there are millions at that point.
Yes.
And the membership, when we go through, I'll show you some of the sort of, headlines as we go through. But yeah, there's a real passion in what he does.
After he'd sort of been retired from the RAF, he was having dinner, a good dinner with Trenchard in one of the London clubs. And Trenchard, at the end of the good dinner, where alcohol had been consumed, there was a moment, according to my grandfather, where Trenchard admitted there had been a policy enacted mid-20s when anybody who was an engineer was not allowed to attain too senior position in the Royal Air Force. And
he would be delighted, because, of course, the current Chief of the Air Staff is an engineer. He's the first person not to be a pilot.
That's what I say in some of my things. Is that it almost, who was it? Somebody was a helicopter pilot as opposed to fast jet. They'd all been fast jet. And somebody about 10 years ago was one of them. It wasn't Stephen Dalton, was it? No, I can't remember who it was a helicopter pilot. But and Trenchard went on to say, never let them get too senior a position, engineers get too senior a position in the RAF because they will take your jobs.
Because they're good at them.
Well, and my grandfather rowed with almost everybody he was under. So he went from Trenchard, Dowding at Bentley Priory, to RAF Walton, where he rowed, to Blackpool, where he rowed, where he was then retired, and he went as air correspondent of the Daily Telegraph, where he could start to write what he thought and wanted to say to all the senior commanders.
He did it here.
Interesting.
But, so this one is May 1946, so he's still in charge. That's the first one with his signature on the bottom.
Right. 1 million members. Yes, he writes that. I think he reached 190,000, was it? Or 180,000 by the time he left.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes. That's incredible.
And actually, he seems to alternate his...
And that was the size, and that's an actual copy.
These are actual copies.
Yeah.
These are all actual copies, this first lot. I think all the ones I've got open were his. I mean, we have got quite a lot of them.
If you have any sound ideas or comments you wish to offer, by all means write to me personally at 105A Gloucester Road. Isn't that incredible?
It's wonderful, isn't it? And this one...
He wanted ideas.
He did want ideas. He wanted members, he wanted ideas, he wanted money.
Yes.
And he seemed to get them all. And interestingly here, he says, personally, I have only one ambition. It is to see this association of ours the powerful good in the world it should be, not only helping each other, but in due time helping all men and all women towards a better and brighter future.
And isn't it interesting he includes women in that?
Yes.
In 1946.
Well, and he's put women. Well, that's his hero, Churchill, on the front.
It is his hero.
He's put women on the front.
Yes, he has.
He's recognised the contribution that women made to as the WAF.
Yes.
And the women who gave so much and then who spent decades desperately trying to get back in afterwards.
Yes.
But yes, he was. Yes,
that was his hero. He tried to write like him as well. And sometimes it works, and quite a lot of the times it doesn't. I think he wrote his unpublished. It's not been published. Unpublished autobiography, and it is very flowery, very high English. But it's and his description of watching the Somme from the air is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And Passchendaele, he says he spent most of the time, he puts down his surviving Passchendaele to the fact that he spent most of his time in a bunker.
Mm.
And he was young. And when he did fly, he was young and thought he was immortal. It was going to be everybody else who died.
Well, don't they all?
Yes.
He must have been, however old he was at Passchendaele, he would have been young.
Yes, 1917 Passchendaele, wasn't it? So he'd have been 20, when was he born, 95? He'd have been 22.
Yeah, that's young. It's not 16 or 17, or some of the 15-year-olds who got away with it.
Yes.
Really young.
Yeah.
Really, really young.
Yeah.
Wow. So there are more bits and pieces here. This is July 46. Talking about money, they've had £200,000 given to the association. He's talking about what to spend it on.
200,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of money in 1946.
It really was.
The money will be neither hoarded nor wasted, but will be devoted to practical ends, such as helping branches to open their centres, extending our paid employment advice bureau throughout the whole country, and building the association towards its goal of 1 million members in 1,000 branches with a £1 million fund behind it.
That's some ambition.
He was an ambitious person, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
I mean, he even calls for the United Nations here, at the very bottom, marked here.
That is the United Nations,
yes,
isn't it?
He's saying UK plus USA plus USSR equals UN. And there were discussions at the time about setting it up.
There were.
He must have known.
Yes, he must.
He must have, the circles he moved.
To call it the UN.
Yeah. He must have known. Because I think it was formally set up that September or later.
And then he can't resist the last line. Humanity, thy fair name stands challenged.
You did say he liked the flowery language.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. And I mean, we do have more. And more. And there are so many.
This is the Royal Albert Hall. Second, our festival reunion at the Royal Albert Hall on Sunday, September the 22nd, starts at 3 p.m.
Mm.
You may still be in time to get tickets. It will be on a first-come, first-served basis, though we have reserved a considerable number for members of the RAF. You should apply for tickets within this allocate. We anticipate a record attendance. The whole show is being broadcast. Well, of course, this, and I guess I knew about this, but not at the very beginning, because one chairman of the CEO of the Royal Albert Hall once said to me that he thought I had appeared more often than anybody else in the building's history. Though I wasn't allowed to tell Sir Cliff Richard, we thought he probably had.
Oh.
So, that's gone out, hasn't it? But I think it was a joke. But whether it's true or not, some people say surely Sir Malcolm Sargent did more. But I've done about 260 conducting performances there, and there can't be many that's done more than that.
And I do wonder if what was set up here turned into what the BBC does each year now as the festival Remembrance. On Remembrance Sunday, there's always an Albert Hall.
Yes, there is.
Event.
Yes.
And they drop millions of copies from the thing, and it's very moving. With this number, I take leave of you. In the first paragraph, it's his last one.
Chairman of your executive committee and as founder editor of Airmail. My job is done. It only remains for me to hand over to others with every good wish to them and to you for the future. I shall not be leaving you, No matter where I may be, I shall retain the profound interest I have always had in our organization. Wherever I may run across our badge, I shall find a friend. And that's good enough for me. Oh,
Isn't that lovely?
oh, it's wonderful. It's really quite emotional to see him writing that. That's extraordinary. Oh, how wonderful. But that was him. Yeah. Gosh.
You must be very proud.
Yeah. And because with our generation, and when I say our generation, my siblings and my cousins, despite the fact that we had 8 previous, because my son is the 9th, 8 previous pilots in the Royal Air Force attaining high permission, high rank, the Air Marshal, Sir, and Air Vice Marshals and Air Commodores and all sorts of things, attaining flag rank. None of us went into the service. Now, I feel my father particularly was a little disappointed that nobody, and there are 9 of us. Funnily enough, there are also 9 siblings and cousins, and none of us went in. But in some tiny, tiny way, I feel like I have done something with the service, what he called the family firm, with the light blue service. And that is what has also made me quite emotional at events I attend and go to, and why I'm so proud to be an ambassador and mention it at most of my concerts.
Well, I've sat in the audience at one of your concerts before, and you turned around and started talking about it. I thought, how magnificent.
Yes, it just gets the name out there.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. So what I want to do now is I'd like to just go on to show you what came after. What you've seen the passion with which he writes.
Yes.
The passion with which he wants to fight for all personnel of all ranks and all genders.
Yes.
And how hard he fought for it. I mean, one thing I didn't show you, he said I give ML to you as a gift. I think he had set it up under his personal, with his personal finances. And then he gave it officially to the RAF Association, which is quite something. It's in one of those reductions, yeah. And then what it became, and it flexed and changed, but it's marked some amazing things in the association's history. And that 80 years of almost what we've got, it's a wonderful archive.
Yes.
And so they did move on to another editor, but again, still keeping the same format, doing all sorts of things. And then they moved on to colour. I'm just going to move these to your side, otherwise I'm going to lose count.
He was, of course, at this point, had just left as air defence correspondent of the Daily Telegraph. Yeah. And he loved that position because he could, as I said earlier, he could dictate to, well, Dowding was probably out of the picture, but Lee Mallory, Keith Park, and all those people, he could dictate what he thought without fear of repercussions within the service. But so when he became air correspondent of the Daily Telegraph, he was given an equivalent salary to a general, although he shouldn't have had it because the army correspondent was the general. And he said, well, I can't be paid less than him. So I've got to get the same salary. So he got that. He got a secretary. He got a very generous entertainment allowance. And I have a feeling of more importance to him was the fact that Lord Camrose, who at the time owned the Daily Telegraph, gave him a suite at the Dorchester.
Oh, goodness.
Permanently.
That's
while he was
delicate living.
Yes, so he would entertain downstairs and just disappear upstairs. Yeah.
That's the third anniversary issue.
So how was he there? He was the 2.5 years, maybe?
Yeah, it was 40. I think it was 46, wasn't it? When he said he put it down in the mass, which is unhelpful. But yes, it was. So it was 2.5.
So where are we here?
So that's the third anniversary issue. So that's after his time.
Yes. Yeah.
And it changed to another editor. But, we were still getting pictures of Douglas Bader on the front cover this is a slightly nibbled front cover. I think mice have been at that one.
Yes.
But we've got Douglas Bader there. And to make his heart sing, the 200,000th member.
Oh, gosh. They did get out to 200,000. Huh? Oh, this was after he left. Right.
Yes, yeah, after he left.
He was about 190 when he left, I think.
And they hit 200,000 and celebrated. The 200,000th member went off to lay the most enormous wreath you could possibly imagine at the Eiffel Tower at a commemorative event.
Oh, gosh. And that's the 200,000 members. A picture of Mr. John Lawrence Pierce.
So,
yes.
It's brilliant.
It is.
And if, he would have still been involved.
Yes.
And you bet he would have been keeping an eye on what was going on.
He would have been.
I do wonder how much meddling there might have been in the background.
Yes.
Founders do tend to do that, but
now
there's no evidence of it.
I've seen that he put in somewhere, when he created Airmail, I think the fee was something like £5, was it, a year?
Back as a first one.
I think, something like that. And for that, they got their name in Airmail.
Oh, there was a big list of names in one of them. Goodness.
They are new members.
Yes. Was that the lifetime membership introduction?
No, I think that's anybody who joined got their name put into Airmail. That was the hook to join.
Mind you, there is a little note here in the first one. Members who have not yet paid this year's subscription are invited to do so. Now, either to their branch or to headquarters.
So this RAF was 47, so that my math says it was formed in 44. Is that correct? That's the third. Oh, no, they're Airmail.
Airmail. No. The association was a combination of different old comrades associations.
Yes.
And went back. I mean, there was a magazine before called the Airman, which we've only got 2 copies of, but they are there. 2 copies of the Airmail, which came before Airmail. But Airmail was the one that stayed.
Yes.
It was the one that had a different approach and stayed and lasted. I mean, it's lasted 80 years. It's 80 years in May. So,
and the 2 words were combined. Isn't it? Airmail, one word now.
No, well, not when we write about it in copy. The logo makes it look as though it's all one. But we have to be very careful not to be associated with Airmail, which used to be the post office issue, because there was a branding issue, a copyright issue to do with Airmail, as in Blueies, and what people used to write home from when they were deployed overseas.
So it's still Airmail. 2 words.
It is. When we write about it in the magazine, it's still 2 words. And the logo, actually, I mean, I think we've got, we try to make a distinction in font or something like that to reflect that.
Oh, I better alter my second book very quickly then.
Oh, yes, please.
Yes.
It's all right. Find and replace.
No, I can do that.
The amounts here. Is there an amount here? 6.
Oh, it's gone up, is it? Or
this is the first one.
This is the first one.
Please send me a
6
copy.
shillings.
Send me a copy of Airmail every month for a period of 12 months, for which I enclose 6 shillings.
Yes, 6
shillings. £6. That's probably an annual salary.
Yes.
Yeah, 6 shillings. Not many.
No.
Well, it was probably as a comparative.
Is that per copy of Airmail? 6?
Well, I think it's per member. No, that's for a year.
That's for a year,
and you get them every 2 months, every month.
Right.
Monthly.
Even then, you got them every month.
Yeah, I mean, it's only quarterly now, but you've got them monthly then.
Right.
They had a lot to write about.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and as we say, it was still in the war. They still had another year of the war to go.
Yes.
Well, war in Europe, and then war in the Far East continued after that.
Yeah.
There's a lot to look at. I mean, I've just got a few other front pages and things. The King.
The King. Yep.
Which is quite curious. We then have the Queen.
Scenes from Blackpool. So when
this would have been a conference.
Well, it was the biggest training base of the RAF, certainly. But there were all sorts of, which is where my grandfather ended up before going to RAFA, in charge of the base.
Mm.
So he started presenting people like, well, you're far too young to remember, people like Dame Anna Neagle.
Now, there's a trophy named after her. A lot of the names in here, Trefusis Forbes, Anna Neagle, there are trophies that we still present.
And I worked with, one of my first jobs was working with Anna Eagle.
Really?
So I was able to go up to her and I say to her, do you remember my grandfather? Sadly, he died by the time I worked with Dame Anna. She was Mrs. Higgins in My Fair Lady out to the Adelphi Theatre when I conducted the show there. Yes, she had fond memories of my grandfather. Yeah.
How lovely. How really lovely. The Queen became our patron. Be careful with these ones.
Yes. Perhaps won't touch it.
Well, I mean, people may be saying, why are you touching this without gloves? But actually, the National Archives at Kew now say that if your hands have been recently washed,
I have.
And you do, because you treat them more gently when you don't have gloves on. When you have gloves on, you tend to...
Yes.
You can't feel properly, so when you grip them hard.
When did it go from tabloid to broadsheet?
I would have to go back and look. I mean, we have one hanging on the wall through there, which is 33. Well, I don't know why. I think they just changed the format. So I think it depended on some of it. I mean, I've seen some where they say, we're sorry, we've reduced the amount. There's paper rationing.
Yes.
So, of course, if you think about it, even through the 50s, there was rationing of all sorts of things. And I think it must have been quite luxurious to be able to go broadsheet.
And it probably looks, for those times, this is the late 40s, early 50s.
That looks like a newspaper.
It does look like the Times, the Telegraph, the Mail. They were all broadsheets in those.
And so it's a
serious piece of journalism.
Yeah, piece of journalism. And they do report.
Just after I've been born, literally.
Yes, when the Queen became our patron.
Yeah, gosh.
And there's all sorts of stuff through here. I mean, it's fascinating going through it. I mean, in terms of the history and everything, this is just randomly, but a lot of it is association business, rightly, and a lot of it is stories, member stories, which we still do.
Yes.
Members' memories.
I love those. They're at the beginning of airmail. I thought they used to be.
The new ones.
Yes.
The new ones now, we do 3 at the back. So this is the most.
What's the one
got to you yet?
This is, it has. It has got to me. There's somewhere in here, there used to be, right at the beginning, stories. They're now at the back.
Yeah, we've turned them at the back. The membership one, since we've done the revamp of this one, which started last autumn, wasn't it?
Right.
So we have the airtime section at the back.
Right.
So there's 3 member stories here. I mean, that one's Basra. And then we have the branch news in between as well. This one is about Ralph Ottey and coming over from Jamaica in 1944. And this one is a current RAF photographer who actually took this amazing picture. How he got the shot.
I should look forward to it. I have got it.
Yes. And there's a video talking to him as well.
Oh, right.
So yeah, okay. And interestingly, this issue, later this month, we will send out a digital version of this, which you can click on the bit. So on that picture, it says, click on the video.
Oh,
see what Matty says, there'll be a link.
Oh, very good.
So in the 80th year, we are moving it forward again, as well as we can. And it's interesting. I mean, this for us is obviously this one. This is in the, these are some 60s. Now we're missing 60s covers, which is why these are copies and things.
Yeah.
But the welfare stuff, these lads here, they were a group of orphans. They'd lost their parents in the war. Right. And the association sent them for a holiday to Switzerland.
They'd lost both of them.
I definitely one, possibly both.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. And threw them on BEA.
Yes. Well, there were probably connections.
Yes.
A lot of people would have gone off to work in virtually commercial airlines.
I remember once going to Malta as a young child with my father and my family. And of course, my father knew the captain. So we all got up onto the flight deck. And the captain got out of his seat. I sat in the seat. My sister sat on my lap. And just over the Alps, we had to do a turn. And the captain said, do you want to turn the aircraft? To my sister, who was 6. And he said, press that button there. And it was on the center console. I remember being so angry that I couldn't do it myself. And she pushed the button. the aircraft turned right and off we were. Can you imagine that happening?
Well, you wouldn't even get into the
No, you wouldn't.
into the cockpit these days because, not allowed.
No.
I don't think even the...
It was on an old Vanguard, I seem to remember. Viscount Van.
This was the look in the look in the 60s, and those are our wings appeals.
Yes.
Which we still run. There's 70 years of fundraising on as the wings appeal in September, which is just amazing, absolutely fabulous. And then we get into the colour, and we start getting into the fast jets and things.
Yes.
And memorial issues. So it's just beautiful colour photos.
Now, these are the ones we sort of recognise, don't we? Hold it up the camera.
Yes.
But you can recognise the format.
And look, Lord Tedder started it. That's looking back at the beginning of that, because I think you've got, I know this is the anniversary one, but, looking back at the beginning, because of course by 1980, whatever that would have been, people would have died and members who were coming in wouldn't have known about the beginning.
So Lord Tedder did start RAF.
Yeah. Well, he was involved. He's in that first, his name is here. In the first, you said he was a friend of E.L. Howard, didn't you?
There's Trenchard.
Oh, Trenchard, sorry. Have I got the wrong one then? We had Tedder Court. We had something named
No, Tedder. I remember the name, and he writes about Tedder.
Okay, Trenchard. So so this is the governing body. His Majesty the King, the Viscount Trenchard, John Salmond, who's Marshal of the Royal Air Force then. There's Gwyn Vaughan, Longcroft, Trefusis Forbes, John Steele, Goodhand, who is one of that's Mrs. Goodhand. Oh, no, that's Mr., sorry. Because Goodhand, Pearce and Bartlett were the three whose idea it was to combine all of the old comrades associations, men's and women's.
Yes.
We have names, the room's named after them in this building because of that. And they were the ones who had the idea. But then I think once it was set up, I think that's where Air Commodore Howard Williams turned up. And because he's here, this is the first one.
Yes.
And Ballantyne, and then the secretary, and that's it. So there are connections.
Yeah, indeed.
It's astonishing, really. And there's some really, there's someone you might recognise.
Yes, our king.
But he was president for a while. The Duke of Edinburgh, what I call the Duke of Edinburgh, so to meet Prince Philip, he was president 3 times.
Why did he get voted off, or did he get sacked?
No, I think he was just invited and accepted for a year at a time, and was invited again. So, because president is ceremonial isn't the right word,
right.
But it's it's the head member basically.
Yes.
And
so, who has succeeded Her Majesty? Our Majesty.
We don't have a patron at the moment. We're waiting to hear. Like a lot of other charities.
Yes.
So they haven't started the military ones last time I heard. And of course, since the beginning of this year, I think there's probably been a slowing of business given the health issues in the royal family at the moment.
Yes.
Understandably.
Yes.
So yes, we're waiting to hear.
Wow.
And then I've just picked out things because it's the regiment, because it's Bosnia, it's getting very Gulf War exclusives. Yes. We marked so much of the life and times of the Royal Air Force. Harriers. What an amazing photograph of a Harrier.
See, nowadays, you would be accused of photoshopping that. But of course, that is not photoshopped.
I don't think they could possibly have done that in June 1999.
Oh, they probably could, but they wouldn't have done. That's the point. Nowadays, they just wouldn't bother. And you just Photoshop it and put it vertical.
This one, interestingly, was when there's the first mention of talking ML. Now, we do a talking version, which we send out to 100 people. So we voice the pieces for members who can no longer see, but we want to keep them in touch.
How wonderful. I didn't know that.
And it comes out of the ML team as well.
So you voice it internally by people here?
We've got volunteers, actually.
Oh, wonderful.
So we do some.
Yes.
I'm made to do the editor's piece. It seems appropriate. And we do some of the.
And let's just say you want to do the editor's piece. You're not made to against your will.
No, I'm delighted actually, because it means I know I can talk directly to people, and that's lovely. I mean, I'm a big fan of radio person.
Yes.
I listen to a lot of radio.
Yes.
And it's very personal and in your head. And I like to be able to speak to the recipients of Talking AML and say, hello, welcome, it's Annie here. So some of the staff do it. And then we have some regular volunteers, 4, 5 regular volunteers.
Very good.
Who contact us and say, hello, I'm ex-BBC or I'm ex-RAF, or hello, I'm this and the other. And say, is there any way I can help with? And they volunteer, which is
Wonderful.
lovely.
Wonderful.
Put it on USB sticks, goes out, articles for the blind.
Yep.
And they stick it. We send out little speakers as well, high-vis speakers with buttons. So you just literally put it in and listen, and then send it back to us, and we send the next issue the next time, which is lovely. But it came out of the Yorkshire area. Talking AML, Yorkshire region produced an audio version of AML for the blind, partially sighted, and disabled. For details, ring. And that was what was then adopted at HQ.
And this was 1999.
Yeah. So we started doing audio versions. So it started happening regionally. They recognised it. And because of the membership structure and the fact that it's a member-led organisation, this was a way of developing welfare and spreading it across the country. And we still do that, which is really, really lovely. And then, interestingly, this is the 60-year anniversaries magazines of RAFA and of comradeship, of welfare and of fundraising. And that's when we were at our height of respite homes. I mean, all those amazing places that people could go to. Some of which still exist. Hansbury still exists.
Yes.
Wexford House still runs. We have places at Storrington, Dowding House in Scotland.
Oh, yes, Dowding House. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you're beginning to see the difference in pictures, aren't you?
Yes. The quality of them.
Quality.
And the print.
So, yes. How fascinating.
I mean, they could never have done a photo like that in the early versions.
No.
It's a beautiful colour photo, and the print quality is amazing, and the glossy paper helps as well.
It does. It does.
And actually, if we do look at things like these ones, I mean, we spend a lot of time making that a really lovely photo. We think really hard about what we put on the cover now.
That is incredible.
There's a lovely, I can't find the engineer in there. Where is it?
I think I remember this. I do.
Yeah, there's this one.
Because the reflection of the map in the visor. He's obviously on an airfield.
We had to talk.
Pin sharp.
Yeah.
Pin sharp. Focus.
We had to talk very nicely to BAE Systems to use that, because actually it's promoting the helmet, which links in with the cockpit. It's the heads-up displays and the glass cockpits, and it ties in with how the training works now, because, of course, how you train someone to fly in something like that is totally different.
Yes.
But then you also get the engineers. What a fantastic photo.
It's fantastic, yes. That's quite recent.
Yes. Well, that was taken in Akrotiri a little while ago. No, I don't think I put the date on it. And then the lovely Jeff Brereton being taken for him checking. Have you seen the video?
No.
Oh, the most beautiful video. We'll have to show you.
Oh, yes. And somebody's put him in the green overalls.
Yeah. Hurricane that he worked on in the Battle of Britain.
Yes.
Still flies.
Yes.
And it's a one-seater, so he couldn't go in it.
Yeah.
But what they did was they put him in a two-seater aircraft next to it, and he flew next to it.
And there's a great picture of that as well. Yes, I've seen.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, just magnificent.
Yes.
And it's interesting where we've come to use it. I mean, I'm interested because obviously you said your son serves now.
Yes.
As well at Odium. I mean, I knew he was at Odium when we last spoke, and I didn't know if he was still there or if he'd been stationed elsewhere.
He's now captain and combat ready, should it be needed. I think as we're talking about, I can start to show you.
Oh, please do. I'm itching for this.
So this is part of my grandfather's autobiography, which is unpublished. You won't have seen this. And there are spelling mistakes in it because this was transcribed by my brother from, a thing, almost typewritten or handwritten thing. So this is where we are. Towards the end of World War II, World War II, I was elected as executive chairman of the RAF Association and ran the association to a membership of 187,000.
Yes. He must have been so pleased
yes,
with 200.
When I left. My aim was always 1 million members in 1,000 branches. So he's saying what he said there. But the Air Ministry got weaving in their secret way and finally overpowered me with deadbeats, such that it now only numbers some 90,000. So this was in the 60s he wrote this. He wrote this in, I think, 64 out in Kenya. I decided the time had come to resign and let others carry on where I left off. I virtually forced them to have Battle of Britain weeks and wing days to collect money on a certain flag day each year. I started the Albert Hall Remembrance Days, among much else, in which I must have been directly responsible for putting literally millions into the RAF Benevolent Fund. A very proud day indeed, and I have no regrets. Airmail was a journal I started, but this goes on and talks about...
Picture.
Yes.
There's that front. So it is his, even though it hasn't got a signature. I knew it was his.
Yeah, indeed.
That's the July one, actually. We haven't got that one. We've got May and June. That's interesting.
Good luck and God bless you. There's always the final paragraph is in bold.
Yes.
Good luck and God bless you. There is our message to all Allied fighting men at this time.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to talk about some of the dinners and personalities. He went as my duties with the RAF Association kept me in constant touch with the late Lord Trenchard, writing this in 64.
Yes.
He it was who got me the job of air correspondent on the Daily Telegraph. But yes, so this you are welcome to have and read through. And if there's anything you want to quote from it, you are welcome to. Those are the only places. There's a number of mentions of dinners he went to and who he met at them and stuff like that.
Wow. Because he was spending his whole time fighting for the people.
Yes.
Which is just, as it looks like there's some lovely stories in here as well.
There are a lot of very colourful stories throughout. I mean, you'd have to, in this day and age, and sadly, you would not be able to print it as it is. I mean, he's got 5 titles, and I think for the autobiography, and the only one we could possibly use is O Sole Mio, because nobody knows why he wrote that. But, Between the Sheets is another one.
Yes. Well, they sound like cocktails now, don't they?
Well, yes, they probably do. Yes.
I first met Sir Anthony Eden when the Rifle Brigade came to the Somme battles. He was a very gallant young officer. Harold Macmillan and I have met twice, once casually when he was a young subaltern in the Guards during World War I, and once as joint guest of honour at an RAF Association dinner at Sutton and Cheam. A quiet and dignified person I found him, little realising one day he would be Prime Minister of Great Britain. He
was at Heston Aerodrome when he came back waving that bit of paper.
Really?
Peace in our time, yeah. Because I think it was Heston they flew back to, I think. And he was waving that piece of peace in our time. Peace in our time. E.L. Howard Williams was there. Yeah. I mean, my family have been at some of the great events of the 20th century.
And with that, we come to the end of the conversation between RAF Ambassador Anthony Inglis and current editor of Airmail Annie O'Brien. We want to express our thanks and gratitude to Anthony for giving up his time with us today and sharing his personal memories with us all. You can keep up with all things Anthony Inglis at his website anthonyinglis.com. That's anthonyinglis.com. There you'll find information on his upcoming events, social media links, where to find his autobiography, and much more. Throughout the conversation, you may have heard about the valuable work of the Imperial War Museum with digitising and sharing some of the rare copies of airmail they hold. To see more about their work and visit their museums, please go to iwm.org.uk. That's We'd like to say thanks to all the members' contributions to Airmail over the last 80 years. As Anthony himself said, the members' letters are some of his favourite parts of Airmail, and they're ours too. So please, continue to send your stories and letters to us via our email address, which is airmail@rafa.org.uk. That's airmail@rafa.org.uk. Finally, we'd like to thank you for listening all the way to the end, and let's leave you with Anthony reading out again his grandfather's farewell piece in Airmail. Thank you.
My job is done. It only remains for me to hand over to others with every good wish to them and to you for the future. I shall not be leaving you. No matter where I may be, I shall retain the profound interest I have always had in our organisation. Wherever I may run across our badge, I shall find a friend, and that's good enough for me.